Part 108. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1073. When Mu Yangling woke up the next day, Qi Heiran was refreshed and took a few boys to ride horses on the grass. The euphemistic name was, Review before the competition. Mu Yangling originally wanted to go into the mountains for another run, but thought that this was the first real competition for the children, and it seemed that the competition was still great, so he reluctantly went to watch. The Emperor and the Empress were honored to appear because of the participation of the princes in this competition, so many civil servants and military generals also appeared logically. The officials of the Ministry of Rituals and the Imperial Guards were so busy that they had to surround the arena, move tables and chairs for the onlookers, and set up parasols for the dignitaries. There is no way, who would let the Emperor be kind and not bear the ministers standing in the sun? They are all pampered ministers. They stay in the sun and stand for half a day, and half of them lie down the next day. Who will work for him and manage the country? Seeing that the Imperial Guards were too busy, Qi Heiran waved his hand to tell the Imperial Guards to leave him alone and hand over the supplies to his little guards, and let them build it. Seeing Rongxian, he concocted according to the law, and other ministers were also busy letting the servants they brought with them to work, because they were not like Qi Heiran who could bring a row of guards, so the number of people serving them was limited, so they simply used one parasol together. Praetorians, you didn't have one of you. Finally, the Imperial Guards were vacated, and the officials of the Ministry of Rituals also breathed a sigh of relief, and arranged the competition list and regulations almost. It is said to be a horse race, but it cannot be just a horse race, otherwise it would be so monotonous. This time, the hunters are looking for outstanding horse generals to prepare for future wars. Therefore, this competition includes 4 categories: horse racing, wrestling, archery and riding archery. It is divided into children's group and juvenile group. Coincidentally, the 4 of Xiaoan belong to the children's group, while Xiaobao and Xiaoxiang belong to the youth group. And those over the age of 16 who want to participate in the competition have to enter the mountain forest for hunting competitions, which belong to the youth group and are not included in the juvenile group. Qi Xiaoyuan never liked to waste time, so it wasn't long before he had breakfast, and he brought the queen and the interested princes and concubines into the arena, and after sitting down, he encouraged the children a few words, and then immediately announced the start. Not more than a quarter of an hour before and after. The officials of the Ministry of Rites thankfully wiped off their sweat. Thanks to the Emperor's brevity, the game is expected to be completed this morning. The first competition is the junior group wrestling. Because there are more people who sign up, 15 groups will be held at the same time, and the winner can enter the next competition. In the second round, the lottery was drawn, and one person had a bye. This time, it was a group-by-group competition. Both Xiaobao and Xiaoxiang were lucky, and both entered the second round. Xiaoxiang and his opponent made the same move, and then Xiaoxiang knocked down the boy who was 2 years older than him and half a head taller. Xiaoxiang knew that he was stronger, so he apologized a little embarrassedly, "I am stronger." The opponent thought he was showing off, couldn't help but glared at him, and ended up resentful. It was more difficult and lucky for Xiaobao to win. Because he is the prince, the other party didn't dare to attack at first, and Xiaobao took advantage of it, but the other party was about the same age as him, also 13 years old. After hugging and pulling, the anger came up, and he tried his best to suppress Xiaobao, but he fell behind at the beginning, and even after trying hard, he gradually failed. Xiaobao is not ignorant, although his kung fu is not as good as Xiaoxiang, but he has also practiced it quietly, and when he knocks someone down, he will jump up happily. He knew that unless he got a bye, it would be difficult to enter the third game, but he was also very happy to enter the second game. But the prince's luck was so good that he had a bye in the second round. Faced with doubts that seemed to exist, the prince can't help but look at the minister of the Ministry of Rights beside him. His father, emperor, and queen mother disdain to do such a thing, but the Ministry of Rights. The Ministry of Rights stood expressionless, sweat dripping down his back. He used his personality to guarantee that he really did not cheat. The emperor and the crown prince had no such intentions. How could he do such a thankless thing? Is the prince's luck also to blame? The four little ones were not aware of the strangeness in the field, and shouted excitedly, cheering for Xiaobao and Xiaoxiang, and the audience could only hear them shouting "Come on," at the top of their lungs. Qi Xiaoyuan turned his head and asked Qi Heiran, "Why are these kids shouting for cheers? What's the meaning of cheers?" Qi Heiran couldn't bear to look at Mu Yangling, and explained, "They were shouting indiscriminately." Qi Xiaoyuan glanced at Mu Yangling, and looked directly past Qi Heiran at Fan Zhaijin. "I always feel that this word is very familiar." Fan Zhaijin raised his mouth slightly, and said, "Your Majesty feels good. In the past, when Heiran competed with others or raced horses in Baidi, Aling often yelled that. After a long time, we got used to it. When the children encouraged others, they also yelled. Seriously, I don't understand what it means." Mu Yangling looked forward without squinting, as if she didn't hear what they said. How would she explain it? Was it a slip of the tongue? "Don't speak dialect at all." Qi Xiaoyuan knows some of the dialects of the 10 townships in the north. There is no way. The resident general has to deal with the border people, and he will know the dialect even if he doesn't know the dialect. So if you can't find a reason, it's better not to say it. Qi Xiaoyuan glanced at Mu Yangling with a half smile. There were a lot of puzzles about his siblings, and he was not in the mood to pursue them. He shook his head and continued to watch the game. Little Treasure was cheering on Little Bear cheerfully, and after shouting twice, Little Bear won. Qi Xiaoyuan looked a little bored, and Qi Heiran said, "Little Xiang is not allowed to participate in such competitions in the future. The eldest grandson of the Ministry of War is good, and he is considered among the best among this group of children. In the end, he only passed 3 tricks when he met Xiaoxiang. It's too unfair to lose." Hearing this, the minister of the Ministry of War almost burst into tears. The emperor's holy words, his grandson is obviously very good, but he lost so badly because he was unlucky and won the lottery of the Prince of Rongjun. Qi Heiran curled his lips and said, "Brother Huang, you can't deprive Little Bear of his rights just because he's powerful." Qi Xiaoyuan raised his forehead, feeling a little helpless towards his younger brother's beloved son regardless of the occasion, glanced at Mu Yangling, and saw that she was also arguing for his son, so he couldn't help but said, "A martial arts practitioner should find an opponent who is evenly matched. His ability is even better than the competition with the youth group. If he comes to compete with the youth group again, isn't he bullying the children?" Qi Heiran rolled his eyes, and said, "Brother Huang said this, why don't you let him compete with the youth group, and let the eldest grandson of the Minister of War be promoted?" Qi Heiran has never been the one who suffers. Qi Xiaoyuan glanced at him and asked, "What do you want to do?" "Brother Huang, if Little Bear can win the first place in the youth group this time, let him follow me to the Northland next year." Qi Xiaoyuan showed anger on his face, and said, "He is only 12, he is still a child. Didn't I follow you into the barracks when I was 12 back then? 12 is not young anymore." Qi Heiran said seriously, "Little Bear is even stronger than I was before." The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1074. Qi Xiaoyuan looked at Mu Yangling. "You think so too?" Qi Xiaoyuan hoped that Mu Yangling would refuse. As a mother, she would not want her son to suffer. Mu Yangling pondered, Xiaoxiang's cultural knowledge does not need to be considered, he is only at the level of junior high school graduation, but his military quality can already graduate from college. As a general, Kung Fu is necessary, but it is not very demanding. Fighting pays more attention to immediate Kung Fu, and Xiaoxiang started learning military art at the age of 7, and Chi Heiran explained it to him, took him to practice, and took him from time to time. It can be said that although he is only 12 years old, he is not weaker than those veterans or captains in their 20s in military affairs. This is the advantage of background and resources. Little Xiong has already determined that he will inherit Chi Heiran's position in the army. In this case, it will not be of much use for him to stay in the capital. Although it is dangerous to follow them to the front line, it will be more beneficial to his career development. As for the danger, it is more dangerous to let the child go to the battlefield alone. This time, with her and Chi Heiran watching, the danger has been reduced. There really is no better opportunity than this. Mu Yangling nodded and said, if Cub can get the top 3 in the youth group this time, then let him go. It directly dropped the champion to the top 3. Chi Ziyuan's eyes darkened, and he said, you guys are willing. Mu Yangling smiled and said, if you didn't have that plan, I still want to send Xiaobao to the battlefield. As a prince, how could he not know about war? Chi Ziyuan stopped talking immediately. He was still thinking about the royal conquest, so as the prince, Xiaobao had to stay in the capital to reassure the people. If Xiaobao also went to the battlefield, if something happened, the world would be in chaos. Even if there is no accident, the monarch and the prince are in danger at the same time, and scaring can scare people to death. The matter was settled in this way. Chi Ziyuan called Xiaoxiang and the poor grandson of the minister of the Ministry of War, and conveyed their opinions. Xiaoxiang went to participate in the youth group competition, and he agreed to join the army if he could enter the top 3. Promoted by the eldest grandson of the Minister of War. Little Xiong asked happily, Uncle Huang, will I be able to go to the front line with my father next year after joining the army? Chi Ziyuan said meaningfully, I'll talk about this later. You should join the army first if you have the ability. Even if everyone has reached a consensus that the war will start next year, the words cannot come out of his mouth, lest they can make preparations in advance. Chi Heiran winked at his silly son and told him to shut up. Little Xiong didn't see it, and excitedly waved goodbye to Xiaobao, telling him to continue to work hard, and ask someone to take a big bow and jump on his BMW before rushing into the forest to chase away people. He went in more than half an hour later than those people, so he couldn't delay any more. The ministers looked at it, and couldn't help but feel that it was unfair to the Prince of Rongjun. Firstly, he was young, and secondly, he had been in the palace for a short time. But some people thought that the tiger father had no dogs, so maybe the prince would win? At this time, the aggrieved grandson of the minister of the Ministry of War also returned to the arena. Because he was overwhelmed by the cubs, he was burning with fire. Xiaobao lost in the 4th round of 8th and stopped in the 3rd round. Although the eldest grandson of Shangshu of the Ministry of War won the championship, because Xiaoxiang defeated him before, everyone thought that the champion was Xiaoxiang, so Xiaoxiang can be regarded as the uncrowned king. After that, there are horse racing, archery, and horseback riding. These are Xiaoxiang's favorites. Following Xiaoxiang, Xiaobao's horsemanship is also good. In addition, Chi Ziyuan is a general, and he attaches great importance to the prince's riding and archery. Zhongdu entered the top 3. He even won the best first place in riding and shooting. Everyone agrees with the fairness of the competition. After all, everyone has seen it. If there were players who were afraid of hurting the prince in the first wrestling competition, no one in the next 3 competitions again, they all did their best. The champion of the other 2 games is still the 14-year-old grandson of Shangshu of the Ministry of War. He has won 3 championships by himself, which is considered a big show. If it is said that the ministers in the juvenile competition were calm and congratulated the parents who got good rankings in a humble and graceful manner, then in the children's competition, all the ministers had only one color on their faces, black. Because the top 4 were all taken by the princes of the royal family and Duke Angguo's mansion, what's more, these 4 children are not humble at all, and the smug looks made the well-trained civil servants couldn't help but want to beat them a meal. They felt that the gentle emperor and the elegant Nquagong would not be able to teach such a child, so they rushed towards Chi Hao with their sharp eyes. And Chi Heiran was proud of the children's performance, his chest was very straight, and the proud expression on his face deserved a beating no matter how you looked at it. Then you look at your youngest son or grandson with hatred, can't you be more uplifting? Can't compare to the two young masters of the Rongjun prince's mansion, is it also not as good as the eldest son of Nquagong's mansion? It doesn't matter if you beat the second prince, the second prince is the youngest among them, but even he got a third and a fourth. How can you children who are 10 and 9 years old feel so embarrassed? The children were looked down by their father or grandfather, and stared at the four children one after another. The tiger head and the little lion raised their smiling faces and looked at their parents begging for praise. Even Mu Yangling, who was still angry with them, couldn't help showing a proud smile. The tiger head won the wrestling and horse racing championships, but the little lion won the archery and riding archery championships. This is not surprising. The two children's military literacy is very high, and these are between equals, even in shooting. It's even at one point. The reason why the tiger head won the runner-up is that one of his arrows hit the junction of the 9th ring and the 10th ring. Runner-up. The surrounding officials couldn't help but lament the power of King Rong's inheritance. The three sons are so good in martial arts, and the fourth one seems to be good. In time, Da Qi will have 4 more generals. As long as the royal family can't afford Xiaoqiang, the few young masters are alive, and they can keep the Daqi border safe for 50 years. What's more, the second prince is also very powerful. Everyone glanced at the prince secretly, and saw that his eyes were smiling, with a look of joy in his eyes, and they were really happy for the second prince. Several ministers who had experienced the battle for the throne in the previous dynasty glanced at each other. The royal brothers in this dynasty get along well, which can be said to be unprecedented. I only hope that this situation can be maintained, and the prosperity of Daqi will be just around the corner. Fan Zijian was also very happy, he turned his head and sincerely thanked Mu Yangling, "Thank you very much." Xiao Xia also grabbed Mu Yangling's hand excitedly. She never thought that her son could also achieve such an achievement in martial arts. Xiaoan was never worrying in cultural class, but his martial arts talent was really not outstanding against the background of the children of Qi's family, and his body was always weaker than that of Hutu, so Fan Zijian and Xiao Xia's confrontation, his expectations in martial arts dropped to the lowest value. So now that Xiaoan can get 2 third places and 2 fourth places, he is even happier than Chi Heiran knowing that the tiger-headed little lion can take the first place. And this, Fan Zijian and Xiao Xia's unanimously believed that it was Mu Yangling's credit. After all, she had been teaching the children. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1075. The 4 children ran towards their parents sweating profusely. Qi Xiaoyuan had just finished praising Xiaobao, and he didn't mind praising his second son at all. Even Li Jinghua pulled him to praise him several times. Fan Zijian was relatively restrained, he just patted Xiaoan on the shoulder with a smile on his face, and Xiao Xia couldn't do anything to praise his son in public. In contrast, Chi Heiran and Mu Yangling seemed overly complacent, both of them praised them with smiles on their faces, and Hutu said happily, "Daddy, let's go to the youth group competition, maybe we can too. How about getting a good ranking?" The minister next to him with his son participating in the youth competition couldn't help but roll his eyes in his heart. Even if you are the son of King Rongjun, you can't be so brash. A 9-year-old doll dares to run and fight with a teenager in his 20s youth contest? How much does this look down on their son? Chi Heiran also felt that his son was too complacent, so he patted their heads and said, "Let's talk about it next year." Don't be too complacent. You must know that there are people beyond people, and mountains beyond mountains. Mu Yangling also felt that his sons were too proud, but he didn't agree with Chi Heiran's handling method, and said, let them go, see if they can get the top ranking, and let them know, just tell them how good they are. How big it is. Mu Yangling turned his head and said to the two children, Xiaoan and Wensu won't go in with you, you brothers go by yourself and bring the guards, any prey that the guards intervene will not be counted as yours, you are now going in half a day later than others, I allow you to finish work an hour later in the afternoon, is it fair? Of course it wasn't fair, not to mention that the youth group entered 2 hours earlier than them, and they suffered a disadvantage in terms of physical strength and prey distribution, but the tiger head and the little lion felt that they had a big heart and outstanding martial arts skills, so naturally they didn't care about this issue. The censor, who wanted to tell a story, also closed his mouth after seeing the complacent expressions of the two children, so it would be good to let them suffer too, so as not to be too complacent. Xiaoan and Wensu knew that they would be a drag on Tiger Head and Little Lion, so they cheered them up with fists, saying, we're waiting for you outside. The Tiger Head and the Little Lion gave a harsh hum, ran to the Emperor and packed the snacks on his table, took 2 pots of water and ran away. Emperor! Everyone! Chi Heiran and Mu Yangling just nodded their heads as if they didn't see it, it was really embarrassing. Hutu and the Little Lion didn't feel ashamed at all. They got on their horses and yelled at Little Ankai Wensu, wait a minute, we'll bring back a lot of prey for you, maybe we can get the 2nd and 3rd place. Well, we trust you, you must work hard. Xiaoan and the 2nd prince ran to the edge of the forest to see them off, shouting to see them off. Chi Heiran raised his forehead and glared at Mu Yangling. How does she usually teach children? Mu Yangling hesitated for a moment, and felt that the child should be encouraged, so he said resolutely, it is always good to have confidence. Everyone, he. Xiaobao consciously went to bring back the 2 younger brothers who were wandering in front of the forest, and educated them in a low voice, don't talk about the competition for a while, and I will take you back for lunch. Why? I still want to ride a pony inside to cheer for Big Brother Hutu, the 2nd prince lamented. They should have told us earlier that they were going to participate in the hunting competition. Maybe I could make them a banner. Xiaoan hit him, you don't write well enough. The 2nd prince didn't care and said, don't you still have you? I'll cut and paste what you wrote, and the division of labor and cooperation can be faster. Xiaoan hesitated, actually, it's not too late to do it now, and we can see them when they come out, but the tiger-headed Little Lion and Little Bear are rivals, we made it for the tiger-headed Little Lion, shouldn't we also do it for Little Bear? No need, the 2nd prince hesitated, Brother Hutu and we are the best, we share the same bed at night, Brother Xiong will forgive us. The prince almost fell over when he heard the 2 whispering. He regretted leaving his younger brother in Guangzhou. Xiaoan thought about it carefully, and felt that he still couldn't offend Little Bear. After all, Little Bear had the greatest chance of winning. Maybe we can write that Little Bear won 1st place, Little Lion won 2nd, and Tiger got 3rd. Why isn't Brother Hutu the 2nd? The Little Lion's riding and shooting are relatively stable. But Big Brother Hutu has better luck. Xiaoan thought about the past luck of the Tiger Head and the Little Lion, and felt that the fortune of the Tiger Head was indeed slightly better than that of the Little Lion. Then the Tiger Head came 2nd. Xiaobao said exhaustedly, if you dare to write such a banner, you will offend all the civil and military officials present. This time they all brought their nephews to participate in the hunt, and 2/3 of them participated this youth group hunting competition. Because officials from the 3rd rank to the 2nd rank can each bring 3 family members, most officials will choose to bring their wives and nephews, and if they have grandsons over 8 years old, they will also bring them, because they are slightly older than the princes. Big, can take care of them a little, but just can be their playmate, is the best candidate to be their reading companion. I forgot to mention that next year the second, third, and fourth princes will choose companions to study, and the tiger-headed little lion and Xiaoan can also bring companions to study in the palace. Xiaoan's status is relatively low, and it is estimated that few officials above the third grade want to send their sons to accompany him as a companion, and Fan Zijian is also considering supporting some Fan families. He doesn't like Fan Zixiao and other concubine brothers, but he can promote the side members, those Fan family members who have never offended him. So this time, the children above the age of 8 and under the age of 14 came to hunt for the companionship status of a few children. It is no problem to steal their glory, but it is for them to bring the children and grandchildren over the age of 16. Future. As long as they can show their faces in front of the emperor this time and leave an impression, their official careers will be much smoother in the future. If Xiaoan and Wendi show the banner that brother Xiang won the top 3, they must be offended to death. Xiaoan and Qi Wensu were shocked, and said, if they refuse to accept it, they can still fight. We are cheering for brother Little Bear, and they can also cheer for their son and grandson. Xiao Bao coughed twice, and said, as officials of the imperial court, they will not be so immodest. They also put up a banner, even if their descendants really won the championship, and their father praised them, they would come forward and refuse to be modest. Xiaoan and Qi Wensu were even more incomprehensible, but we got good grades in the college exams and competitions. My aunt praised us and asked us to keep working hard. This banner was taught by my aunt during our dragon boat competition. Every class in our academy done. Xiaobao, the masters of your academy must wish to confiscate you. How did Big Brother know? Qi Wensu was shocked. At that time, a gentleman looked at us and shook his head, saying that he regretted accepting us into the academy, but our grades are very good, and we have never been outstanding. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1076. Xiao Bao looked at the two of them speechlessly. It's okay for the second brother to think so, how clever Xiaoan didn't notice the abnormality. He asked, my aunt asked you to make a banner, so no one objected. The two children shook their heads. Why are you against it? Everyone is very supportive, and some merchants paid for us to buy good silk to make banners. No matter how smart and precocious Xiaoan is, he also learned his worldly skills from the people around him. Besides his classmates and husband, the people he had the most contact with were Mu Yangling and his parents. Fan Zijian only cared about his homework, Xiao Xia only cared about his basic necessities of life, and Mu Yangling taught more about the principles of life and getting along with others. The Dragon Boat Festival in Guangzhou has always been grand, and the academies have a 7-day holiday every time. The holiday time is still above the Qingming and Mid-Autumn Festival, because every year there is a dragon boat race at the Dragon Boat Festival, and all academies will participate. Xiaoan and the others are too young to go out of the academy to compete. They can only compete with the other two small classes in the academy. At that time, Fan Zijian, as the governor of a prefecture, not only had to attend the competitions of various academies, but also presided over the dragon boat competitions of various counties and all walks of life, plus various government affairs piled up together, so he had no time to care about a few children. Mu Yangling learned that the tiger-headed lion cub was going to participate in the competition, and Ankai Wensu, as the cheerleader organizer, cheered them on, so he volunteered to help them customize uniforms and banners. It was the first time for Xiaoan and the others to participate in this kind of competition. Seeing Mu Yangling put forward various slogans, they thought that making banners was something that everyone was familiar with. Because they didn't want to win by force, they didn't let Mu Yangling participate, but took her advice. At that time, Xiaoan and the others were still in the elementary class, and they were only 7 years old. Hutu and the others were only 6 years old, and their classmates were all 6 or 7 years old. When they heard that the students from the Wangfu wanted to make banners, they thought it was something from the capital. Enthusiastically joined. So it was passed from the Enlightenment class to the juvenile class, and then to other big classes. By the time my husband knew the news, the banners had already spread from their academy to other academies, and their respective slogans were erected on both sides of the river bank, and it was impossible for them to stop them. Such an unassuming slogan made the dragon boat race that year full of gunpowder, but the businessmen were so excited that they approached the colleges one after another, willing to finance the cost of making the banners, hoping to advertise their shops or businesses. As a result, this habit has been maintained inexplicably. In the past 2 years, the annual dragon boat race in Guangzhou has been filled with banners flying all over the sky. So far, the college students in Guangzhou still think that this is a tradition of Jiangnan competitions, and they all think that Jiangnan people are very confident, but they like it. The younger children thought it was a tradition of the game. Xiaoan, Qi Wensu, and others who are young naturally think so they don't think there is anything wrong with making banners for Xiaoxiang and the others. Isn't this a common thing? But this is indeed not an ordinary thing. On the way back, Xiaobao kept explaining to them that they did not have the habit of making banners, and this would make people feel arrogant, trying to dissuade them. However, Xiaoan and Qi Wensu, who were already deeply rooted, resolutely refused to agree. Xiaoan said solemnly, "This is obviously a self-confidence and a good expectation, how can it be called arrogance and arrogance? Then if the cubs get first, second and third, wouldn't they be ashamed? Why do you lose face?" Xiaoan has always accepted the educational idea of celebrating when you achieve it, and aiming for it if you fail to achieve it. If you don't get the first place this time, try harder next time, as long as they improve next time compared to this time, they will get it one day, but if they don't set ambitious goals first, then they won't work hard. How can they reach this goal? What about the target? Qi Wensu nodded fiercely. Xiaoan said again, Hutu and the others are determined to be great generals. They can't be great generals now, but they will work hard to practice martial arts and learn the art of war when they set this goal. They know better when they are 10 years old than when they are 9 years old. There are many, and the goal is to go further. 11 years old is better than 10 years old, every year is getting stronger, and 1 year will be able to become a general. Qi Wensu nodded again, it's the same as the prince's brother's determination to be a good emperor. You can't be a good emperor now, but you have been working hard towards this goal, haven't you, and you will become better every year, and one day you will be a good emperor. Make a good emperor. Xiaobao was silent for a while, nodded and said, okay, you go, I will help you carry it if something goes wrong. No, I will help you do it together. Xiaoan and Qi Wensu cheered, great, we also said that the tiger head and the little lion are not here, we have to be very busy. When the emperor received the news, the 3 children's banners were almost completed, and a few small pennants were even cut next to them and tied to the chopsticks. This was what Xiaoan and Qi Wensu expected to cheer for the little bears. Xiaobao has never used it before, so he can only follow their instructions, and he has to learn how to use it from them, which makes him feel novel for a while. Qi Xiaoyuan was also very curious. He picked up the banner that wrote Qi Wenjin will win the championship and looked around, nodded and said, the calligraphy is good. Xiaoan raised her hand, I wrote it? That's right, even better than your father when he was a child, and the blue is better than the blue, but can you tell Uncle Huang who you learned this arrogant tone from? Xiaoan blinked, and he was keenly aware that Uncle Huang didn't seem very happy, at least it didn't sound like a compliment. Thinking of what the 4th aunt said to be an honest child, he said, the 4th uncle said that the first thing to compare in a war is the momentum, so the momentum cannot be lost, and the 4th aunt also said that as long as there is room for hard work, the slogan should be put out first, which can not only encourage people, but also give people clear lofty goals. Well, this goal is quite lofty. Qi Xiaoyuan had already held up the second banner, and wrote Qi Wenyuo Qi Wenzheng must enter the top 3, there is still a glimmer of hope for the little bear to win the championship, and the tiger head and the little lion can both. If you take the top 3, all the handsome young men you think of as me are just paper. Xiaoan shouted dissatisfied, the tiger head and the little lion are very powerful. We go to the other courtyard to hunt every year. Last year, they were able to go into the mountains with their uncles and aunts to hunt wild deer. Did they kill the deer, or your 4th uncle and 4th aunt? Xiaoan pursed her lips and said nothing. Qi Ziyuan said, change this banner. If you insist on displaying it, just write some words of encouragement. You are not allowed to write such angry slogans. Xiaoan stubbornly looked at the emperor and said nothing, and Xiaobao hurriedly spoke up for him, Father, I think the second brother and cousin are right. Tell him what Ziyuan and Wensu said verbatim, and said with a smile, as they said, it is always good to establish your ambitions first. Hutu and the others will not be able to enter the top 3 this year. Next year and the next year, work harder for a few more years, you can always get in. Qi Ziyuan glanced at him and asked, who said I want to hold autumn hunting every year? Xiaobao coughed lightly, and whispered, it will be done in a year. Qi Ziyuan snorted softly, turned and left. The 3 children breathed a sigh of relief, knowing that the emperor had agreed to this matter. They all looked at each other excitedly. Qi Ziyuan had agreed, and Fan Zijian and Qi Heiran, who were also rushing this way, had no choice but to stop. Fan Zijian stared at Qi Heiran and said, well, after today, I've lost all face. Qi Heiran rolled his eyes and said, the name on the banner is my son's name, am I even more ashamed? It's what you deserve. Who taught them to make banners? It's fine in Guangzhou. Everyone in Guangzhou follows suit. It won't be conspicuous if there are too many people. But if you look at the entire paddock, who makes this thing? Qi Heiran rolled his eyes and said, why don't I ask people to make some banners, write their names and hang them up? Fan Zijian choked. Qi Heiran poked his neck and said, we must lose face together, and this is my king's good expectation for them. Fan Zijian didn't speak, but just looked at him fixedly. Qi Heiran knew him best, and seeing what he didn't understand, he immediately swore, I did this, and I ordered the children. Fan Zijian exhaled, patted his chest and said, this candidate is also particular, just wait, I will send you a list later. I'm going to ask the guards, maids, eunuchs, and maids to help, and I will definitely be able to make it when they hang up the banner. Because the time is limited and the banners that can be made are limited, the selection of the list is very important. Fan Zijian can't choose all the thorny heads, and he can't choose all the officials who will curry favor with Qi Heiran, let alone all civil servants or military generals. Intensify the contradiction. So he chose according to a certain ratio, even taking into account the position of the official and the small, and the personality of each person. Qi Heiran got the list and sighed, it's really a pity that Big Brother didn't put you in the official department. Fan Zijian said proudly, I'm not bad at the household department. Who can compare to my earning ability and calculations? This is true. That's why the elder brother trained you to be the prime minister. Fan Zijian snorted contentedly. And Mu Yangling said straight after hearing the 2 people's methods, it's really shameless. Zioxia also looked at them in shock, and was thinking about dissuading them. After all, this would offend too many people, but Mu Yangling continued, Li Shun and the others are all familiar with it, and Xiaoting also helped them. Bring a few copies, we will help to do it, and move faster. Ling, Xiao Xia turned her head to look at her in shock, and accused her, you said you were shameless just now. But dead friends don't die, poor people, who let them be their own children, if we don't help them, who will help them? This is also true. Xiao Xia hesitated for a moment, and immediately said to Fan Zijian, our women's family is done. You wrote the letter and sent it to us to help with it. Go, don't miss Xiaoan and the others. Fan Zijian and Qi Heiran. Women are so fickle. So who is shameless? The two cousins looked at each other, turned around decisively and went to work. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Zhu. Chapter 1077. The time for the hunting competition of the youth group ended, and when the officials arrived at the edge of the forest one after another to wait for the return of the contestants, they suddenly found red silk cloth hung on the edge of the forest, and the names of each contestant were written. Either they must win, or they must win the championship. Big characters. The officials couldn't help but widen their eyes. Who did this? How shameless! He actually wanted to use this method to disturb the emotions of the players. Everyone looked for the famous father or grandfather on the list, but their faces were also very dazed, and they were still a little ashamed in their hearts, but they were faintly proud when they saw that their children were not the only ones on the list. Although I don't know who did it, it is still very pleasing that his son, grandson, can be valued so much. Therefore, after being dazed and ashamed, the expressions on the faces of the famous parents on the list gradually became serious, and they looked back at those questioning eyes confidently. Seeing this, Chi Heiran and Fan Zijin breathed a sigh of relief. The banners made by Zioan and the others are not very obvious among the many banners. Zioan and Chi Wensu couldn't help but feel frustrated when they saw it. They thought they were already fast, but they didn't expect to be snatched ahead of them. When they came out, many banners were hung up. The second prince looked at Xiaobao reproachfully. Brother prince, you still said that they don't make banners, but you see they are doing it faster than us, making us think we are the only ones, and doing it slowly. You see that we are lagging behind. It has helped a lot of people. Xiaobao closed his open mouth, and sincerely apologized to his brother. It's my fault, I never thought I could do that. It was such a good idea that no one noticed them now. The emperor hasn't arrived yet, and the scene is slightly chaotic. Civil servants who have always claimed to be well educated asked the officials of the Ministry of Rights to question. Is this arranged by you? Since it was arranged, why only half of the names of the people were written, and the most important thing is, why is my son's name not on it? My son is so bad. Half of the people pulled up slogans to encourage, but my son is not on the list. The officials of the Ministry of Rights have bitter tongues. They really don't know about this. They went to rest after lunch at noon. They were supposed to arrange the venue, but King Rong said that he would arrange it here and only let them to deal with the dinner party and evening celebration, because the emperor trusts the king of Rongjun. When the prince said this, not only the emperor Wang Gonggong was there, but also the commander of the imperial army, so he thought it was the emperor's order, so he did not think about it. Accepted. But thinking about it now, how could the emperor do such a thing? The officials of the Ministry of Rights peeked at King Rong's direction, and if they said it was the emperor's intention, they wouldn't believe it even if they killed him. If it was really the emperor's order, then officials from the Ministry of Rights should do it. How could the king of Rongjun do it for him? Doesn't this embarrass King Rongjun? The eyes of the officials of the Ministry of Rights turned back and forth among the many banners, and then keenly saw His Highness the Crown Prince and the second Prince Angwo Gong Shizi under the banners, and then followed their hands to look up. It was printed in his eyes, and compared with the fonts on other banners, what else did he not understand? It turned out that the older one was wiping the younger one's ass, so they can't let the Ministry of Rights take the blame. The official of the Ministry of Rights was angry, and his feet were a little unstable. In addition, he was being besieged by the civil servants. He was pulled from left to right, and almost fell to the ground. You have to fall to the ground. After all, he was also a fourth-rank official of the Ministry of Rights. He immediately puffed up his cheeks, and pulled the civil servants who besieged him to look in the direction of King Rongjun, hinting, I really don't know about this matter. The meeting place this afternoon, it was arranged by the King of Rongjun, and the officials took the colleagues from the Ministry of Rights to arrange the celebration banquet in the evening. The officials of the Ministry of Rituals uphold the principle that a dead Taoist friend will not die a poor Taoist, and continued to hint, However, the lower officials look at the characters on the silk cloth, whether they are vigorous or round and elegant. Those who came out, the adults are well informed, maybe they can recognize it. Everyone turned their attention to the words on the silk cloth, and some officials from the Ministry of Household Affairs and the Ministry of Officials whispered, "That seems to be the words of Nkuagong." Some officials from the Ministry of War and Yushitai moved their eyeballs slightly, and said secretly, "Isn't that the word of King Rong?" As a result, everyone turned their attention to King Rong and Dukan, found the culprit, and the venue gradually became quiet. The emperor who was staying in the tent was relieved when he heard the report, and then he took Princess Mingzu's hand and said with a smile to the queen, "Let's go too." The queen nodded with a smile, and couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. This time, the emperor and empress arrived a quarter of an hour later than expected, but no one noticed. It's one thing to know, but it's another feeling to really see it. Seeing many red silk cloths hanging at the exit of the forest, it's like celebrating the new year. The emperor was in a delicate mood and praised Minister of Li, "That's right, today's meeting place is well decorated." The Minister of Rights opened his mouth, but he still didn't say that it was arranged by King Rongjun and Nkuagong. No matter if it's the blame or the blame, he's determined anyway, so it's a compliment, isn't it? The courtiers below glanced at each other, and there was an unappreciable speaker who wanted to impeach him, but it either had his own son's name on it, or the name of the son of a colleague and friend, which was really ugly. However, the officials who were tactful and wanted to curry favor with the emperor and King Rong had stepped forward and followed the emperor's mouth to praise the arrangement when they were hesitating. The military generals are also very bold. Compared with the civilian officials, they can accept this banner more, because military competitions are often like this. No matter whether they succeed or not, they should shout their momentum first. They are not like the civil officials who won. You have to back and forth to be humble. So they also came out and laughed loudly and praised the arrangement. So there were different opinions, and the speaker who wanted to impeach couldn't stand up. He could only look at each other, shook his head, and took a small step back, which was regarded as exposing the matter. The emperor looked around, was satisfied, turned his head and said to the Minister of Rights, "It's Shenxi, set off the fireworks and let them stop hunting." The minister of the Ministry of Rights stood up, bowed in response, and with a big wave of his hand, the officials of the Ministry of Rights and the guards lit the fireworks together. The guards following the players would stop them from hunting and then take them out. Everyone uses different arrows to drag out the prey in the forest, and you can tell whose prey is just by looking at the arrow. Although there may be cheating, but under the supervision of the guards, this chance can be greatly reduced. After the fireworks sounded, some players who were close to each other came out of the forest one after another. When they reached the edge of the forest, they saw the red silk cloth hanging at the exit. The players almost fell off their horses. Fall off the horse. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1078. When the little bear came out, Xiaoan led the three princes to scream and cheer. The third prince and the fourth prince thought it was very novel, and they were a little restrained at first. They turned to look at the father and mother, and saw that the adults were all smiling. "Children, you misunderstood," looked at them, and imitated Xiaoan and his second brother and shouted to cheer for the little bear. The contestants who were already silent looked at Little Bear even more silently. Little Bear showed a big smile, dismounted in front of Xiaobao and the others, and said happily, "I think I should be able to enter the top 3, but I beat 3 deer just now." The contestants who heard this were a little uneasy, and began to calculate whether their prey could be compared with it, and they all got together to discuss, why did the Prince of Rongjun also follow him in? Isn't he participating in the youth group competition today? The son is only 12 this year. If we lose, will this face be thrown at Grandma's house? Qin Ming, the youngest son of the Ministry of War who had already received the latest news, said with a dazed expression, "No, our face is still there if the prince wins, but if his two younger brothers win, we will lose face to Grandma's house." Qin Ming looking at them, he said, "His two younger brothers are 9 years old this year." The contestants were in an uproar, looked left and right, and asked, "Where are they? I want to watch." "It hasn't come out yet. My eldest nephew said that they came in 2 hours later than us, so they can come out an hour later." Everyone looked at each other in blank dismay, unable to speak. No wonder they all came out but hadn't announced the end of the game. It turned out that there were still 2 people in the woods. Qi Ziyuan called the contestants up and began to test their martial arts, art of war and some scriptures. They couldn't just wait. Qing Jun, who was still discussing a lot, immediately raised his head and held his chest, and respectfully stepped forward to answer the questions. This is an excellent opportunity to show himself. Even if he doesn't get a good ranking in this competition, it is a great blessing to be able to answer the questions in front of the emperor. Up. At this moment, everyone no longer complained about the young masters of Rong County Prince's mansion, not to mention just asking them to wait an extra hour. They would be willing to wait another 2 hours, the later they come out, the better. After all, there are only so many rankings in the competition, and the emperor can remember only the top 3 at most, but there are more than 60 of them. But asking questions is different. The emperor asked them by name one by one. In an hour, I dare not say that everyone will be asked, but I can definitely ask 30 or 40. That is to say, as long as they behave well, say maybe the emperor will remember them. Xiao Xiang didn't have to take the school exam, and was a little bored, so he simply took Xiao Bao to eat. Xiaoan and the 3 children decided to stick to their posts and wait until the tiger head and the little lion came out. Bear said he would bring them some snacks. The second prince drooled and said, "I want to eat dried rabbit meat." The eyes of the third and fourth princes lit up, and they looked at the little bear eagerly, while Xiaoan demanded, "I want to eat beef jerky." Little bear waved, "No problem, I'll bring it to you later." Rabbit jerky and beef jerky are both produced by the family's workshop in the Northland, and they taste very good. After eating and drinking, Xiao Xiang went back to the camp and packed some of each for them. As soon as the children finished eating, the Minister of Rites said that the hour had come. Qi Ziyuan ordered the fireworks to be set off again, and when the tiger head and the little lion came out, everyone's prey was pulled out for evaluation. The tiger head and the little lion walked quite a distance, and they came out of the woods 2/4 of an hour later. Their horses were hung with rabbits and pheasants, and the guards behind them were also hung with roe deer and some prey, so that there was no need for standard guards to go inside. Find it, and you can rank it on the spot. The Minister of Rites handed over the list to the emperor, and the emperor laughed and said, "That's right, I have a successor in Daki." The first place was Qin Ming, the youngest son of the Secretary of the Ministry of War. Xiao Xiang took the second place, and the third place was Rong Xian's eldest son Rong Le. Qin Ming heaved a sigh of relief, he was not ashamed at all. But everyone looked at Little Bear with admiration, because Little Bear's prey was very tight. The most important thing is that he entered the forest an hour later than Qin Ming. If he entered with everyone, who is the champion? Certainly. Qin Ming obviously knew this too, so he won the first place, and he didn't feel proud at all. Instead, he felt a little guilty. The emperor smiled and comforted him, "My nephew is blessed by nature. Although he is only 12 years old, he has taken advantage of you. It should be an hour late for you to enter." Qin Ming's eyes sparkled and he said, "I've heard that the son is born with supernatural powers, I wonder if it's true." Qi Ziyuan was also willing to let the Qi family be deified, so he nodded with a smile. The tiger head and the little lion were in the 6th from the bottom and the 4th from the bottom, and the 2 were hanging their heads in frustration and did not speak. Qi Xiaoyuan looked at them and asked, "Now do you know that there is someone out there?" The tiger head and the little lion nodded, and said, "We know that they are stronger than us now, and we will definitely surpass them in the future." Qi Xiaoyuan, well, you have ambition, but ambition does not mean you can talk big. In the future, you must reasonably estimate your ability. No matter how much you achieve, you must seek truth from facts. Don't be too ambitious. The two children complied. The contestants who were still behind the two children stood behind with their necks curled up, almost wanting to burrow into the ground. They were in their 20s, but they were no match for a pair of 9-year-olds. Qi Xiaoyuan was not relieved when he saw this, and if they didn't even have the mental capacity to bear this, they would be useless. The hunting competition this time is just a hunting competition, and he didn't choose officials based on this. If he should study essays, he should practice essays, and if he should practice martial arts, he should continue to practice martial arts. I really dare not use it. Those who accompanied them were all veterans from the officialdom. Seeing the emperor's eyes sweeping over the contestants one by one, they naturally understood what the emperor meant, and looked nervously at their nephews in the field. If they took it calmly, the parents would relax. Breathe a sigh of relief. If the neck is shrinking or the face is full of disappointment, the parents can't help shaking their heads and sighing. This match ended with everyone's complicated thoughts. Qi Xiaoyuan rewarded the top 3, and took the little bear back to the tent. Qi Heiran and Fan Zijin hurriedly followed. Mu Yangling and Xiao Xia took the remaining children and the queen to play in her tent. Qi Xiaoyuan promised that little Xiong would follow him on the expedition next year, but he was unwilling to let little Xiong lead the troops alone. Heiran, you should take him through training first, and then he will be able to lead the troops independently when he turns 14. Qi Heiran quickly responded. Xiaobao, who rushed over immediately, said, "Father, I want to go too." "No," Qi Xiaoyuan said pointedly, "you have to stay in the capital." Xiaobao and Xiao Xiong widened their eyes. "Are you going in person?" Qi Xiaoyuan patted their heads, and said with a smile, "Why, do you think I will only sit on the dragon chair to handle government affairs? I was also the general of the Northland back then, and your fourth uncle is a little general under my command." Xiaobao and Xiao Xiong immediately stared at him, adoring him endlessly. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1079. Not long after the autumn hunting, winter came. After the winter solstice, Fan Zijin and the minister of the household department reported that the food and grass were ready and they could start escorting them. The food and grass of the 3 armies is not a small amount. Qi Xiaoyuan was worried about others, and ordered Fan Zijin to take charge of it personally, with the help of the crown prince. This was Qi Wenqin's first contact with the affairs of the household department. It was a bit difficult, but he could learn new things every day. After one winter, he lost a lot of weight. No matter how much the queen fed him, he didn't gain weight. On the contrary, Xiao Xiong was brought into the army by Qi Heiran, and practiced with the soldiers. After one winter, he grew stronger and stood next to Qi Wenqin, but his cousin was older. Just after the first month, Qi Xiaoyuan expressed in the court hall that he wanted to go to the imperial court in person. Yan Du and the 4 ministers wrote letters to warn them, but Rong Junwang and Qiagong and Zhou Pingxiang wrote to support them. There was a stalemate for a while, but the emperor insisted that his power was getting worse, and Yan Du and others could only take a step back. Qi Xiaoyuan immediately ordered the crown prince to supervise the country, the left minister and the right minister to assist in Beijing, the minister of the household department and Sinong temple to take care of the spring plowing, and not to neglect the spring plowing due to the war and affect the autumn harvest. Immediately ordered Rong Junwang Qi Heiran to be forward, Mu Shi to be the left forward, General Yuan to be the right forward, and dispatched 3 armies to the border of the north. With an order, the whole country is mobilized, but in fact, The three-way army has already followed the grain and grass to all parts of Sinuan Mansion, and it only needs to march forward for a few days to reach the border. The war is just an order. As a forward, Chi Heiran needs to lead the bodyguards to the front line immediately, while the emperor is escorted to the north by Luangjia. But Chi Ziyuan has never been a person who pursues extravagance and ostentation. He makes people easy and easy. He can reach the Northland in January and attack in an all-round way in March. At this time, Mu Yangling was pulling the 5 children of the family to him, and said to the twins, "Tiger Head, Little Lion, Mother has given you a task." The Tiger Head and the Little Lion looked up at their mother with their heads straight. Mu Yangling smiled and said, "You are already big brothers, so you have to take good care of your younger siblings. Can you promise your mother?" The Tiger Head and the Little Lion nodded repeatedly, and asked, "Mother, we will always take good care of our brothers and sisters. If you have anything to say, just say it." But Mu Yangling looked at the twins first, and asked, "Mother is going to leave with Daddy and elder brother for a while, can you listen to what the second and third brothers have to say?" Before the twins could speak, the twins' eyes lit up and asked, "Mom, do you want to go to the battlefield with Daddy and big brother?" Mu Yangling nodded. "Then let's go too." "No," Mu Yangling said solemnly, "you are not capable enough now. One day you can ride horses for 3 days without sleep, and you can pick up the rockery in our garden and put it on the other side." Hutu and Little Lion were still eager to try when they heard the first sentence, but they were a little frustrated when they heard the second sentence, and asked, "When will I get it?" Mu Yangling said seriously, "In a few years, even if you can't lift the rockery, I will persuade your father to send you into the army." The twins felt relieved and assured, "Mother, don't worry, we will take good care of our younger brothers and sisters." Then he turned around and pulled his younger siblings who were still ignorant, and said, "Mother is going to follow Daddy to recover the lost land and become a great hero. You have to listen to us." Seeing the tears in the eyes of the younger siblings, the Little Lion hurriedly leaned into their ears and said, "When Mother is gone, Hutu and I will take you to sleep and play in the street." The twins immediately put away their tears, stuttered and dragged the Little Lion and asked, "Really?" The Little Lion nodded against his mother's fiery gaze. Little Xiong had been standing aside and listening, and couldn't help but ask his mother in a low voice, "Mother, does Uncle Huang know about this?" Mu Yangling gave him a meaningful look. "Bear." The father and mother were so courageous that they decided to kill first and play later. The little bear's eyeballs couldn't help turning slightly, and Mu Yangling drank tea and said, "Don't try to drag Wen Chen away, the emperor will not call him so easily after the New Year nickname. Do you know why?" Little Bear looked at her. "Because he will be 14 after the New Year, and he is now even the supervisor of the country, which is equivalent to the emperor. Your uncle will drive you personally, and the prince must stay in the capital, otherwise the world will not be far from chaos. Don't forget, my big brother Chi's border is not only connected to Dajin, but also to Zixia, and no one knows if there are people with ulterior motives in this dynasty." Mu Yangling said, "I am just the princess of Rongjun, and I can't get out. In the capital, only you children are affected, but the crown prince is related to a country, and you are not allowed to mess around. If you want your father to know that you sent Wen Chen to the front line, if your father can break your leg, is it true?" "Break." Little Xiong could only lower his head in disappointment. "Why does Uncle Huang have to drive himself to conquer? Your Uncle Huang used to be a general galloping on the battlefield." Little Xiong seemed to understand, but he also let go of this matter, and instead asked his mother, "Mom, I am also 13 years old. You can no longer call me by my nickname. You must let the soldiers in the army hear me, and call me by my nickname. What should I do as a child? I'm going to fight on the front lines. You won't be 13 until July, and there's still half a year to go, and you can still go to the front to fight like a dog." Little Xiong looked at his mother with a puffy face, and Mu Yangling patted his head and said with a smile, "Okay, I won't call you by your nickname in front of outsiders from now on." Little Bear was satisfied with this. Mu Yangling did a good job in the ideological work of the children, so he sent someone to invite Xiao Xia that night, and entrusted the children to her. Xiao Xia almost died of fright, said, "You have to leave tomorrow, why did you tell me now?" Mu Yangling chuckled. Xiao Xia immediately understood, and said with a dark face, "Do the emperor and fourth uncle know about this?" "My lord knows." "That is, the emperor does not know." Xiao Xia's face became even darker, and she pulled Mu Yangling to persuade her, but Mu Yangling said in front of her, "Cousin, you know that my home is in Baidi, and my parents and brothers are also in Baidi. It's not certain that we can't meet again. As soon as the prince said to take me back to have a look, I was moved, and I will be willful this time." "But," Xiao Xia hesitated, "that's the front line, and it's too dangerous." Mu Yangling smiled and said, "I still have the ability to protect myself." Xiao Xia had heard that when Fan Zijian was surrounded by pirates, it was Aling who opened the gap with a cannon. Looking at the way Mu Yangling looked at her, Xiao Xia hesitated for a moment, but agreed. Mu Yangling took her hand and smiled. As soon as the people left, Xiao Xia walked away, and still wrote a note asking the girl to secretly hand it back to Fan Manor to Fan Zijian. This is too big a matter, and still needs to be approved by the Duke. "Wait," Xiao Xia called to stop the girl, and said in a low voice, "Don't hand it over now, wait until the sky is getting brighter and the corner door opens." The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1080. When Fan Zijian got Xiaoxia's note, Qi Heiran had already left the city with his wife and children, and Fan Zijian ran over before he even had time to comb his hair. Xiao Xia stood honestly in front of him, bowed her head and said nothing. Fan Zijian was so angry that Yan Mo led people to chase after him, and almost pointed his finger at Zhu Liang's nose. "The army is at Majeng, 6 o'clock, and he is going out at Yinzhen, at 4 o'clock. Don't you think too much about it?" Zhu Liang wiped his cold sweat and said, "Master, the servant really doesn't know about this matter. How can the prince explain things to the little one? He didn't make arrangements for the mother of the family to leave, and didn't tell you." Zhu Liang shook his head firmly, he really didn't know. Fan Zijian couldn't help stomping his feet. He was determined that I would take good care of the palace, so he left without any other distraction. "Lord, no, you hurry up and tell him that if he leaves, I will sell his son to others, so that I will sell him to others. Mu Yangling, come back to me, do you hear me?" Seeing that her husband was already speechless, Xiao Xia reduced her sense of existence again, wishing she could merge with the cabinet behind her. After Fan Zijian scolded Zhu Liang, he turned his head and glared at Xiao Xia, scolding, "You are also stupid. Why didn't you stop me if you noticed something different? You should have started a fight at that time, since the two houses are so far apart. I'll know when there's any movement. Will they be able to leave by then?" Fan Zijian was dizzy with anger, and for the time being, she didn't realize that Xiao Xia was conniving on purpose, but felt that she was too stupid to take the correct way to deal with it. Xiao Xia said weakly, "Master also knows Aling's ability, so I brought a few maids over here. Don't talk about making trouble. As long as I shout, I'm afraid my voice will be muffled before it comes out. The two mansions are not far apart, but we live in the backyard. The mansion is so big, no matter how big the quarrel is, the news won't get out, let alone the quarrel can't happen." Fan Zijian covered his head and said angrily, "I'm stupid too. The parting is imminent. The husband and wife are saying goodbye. How could they take you in at this time? It's tricky at first glance. I was obviously suspicious, but I didn't want to ask you." Xiao Xia asked weakly, "Then what should we do about this matter?" "The emperor doesn't know yet." Fan Zijian gritted his teeth, got up and said, "He only brought 5,000 elite soldiers, and they were all cavalry. Since he didn't need the emperor to see him off, it would be very easy for him to set off ahead of time. I'm afraid they are already ready to leave at this time. Even if I chase them, it is impossible for a Ling to come back. Once the army is launched, it cannot turn back, otherwise the omen will be bad. Even the emperor will not make such a bad omen. This front line, a Ling is going to fix it. That. Then what? Either you take all the children to the Duke's mansion, or we move here. Now there are only 4 children in the palace, so let them live by themselves, Fan Zijian said angrily. I'll wait until dawn, go talk to the emperor. Qi Heiran left Fan Zijian a mess, but his words were tough, but his heart was so soft that he had to wipe their s. Fan Zijian stood up sullenly for a while. You stay and take care of the children, don't let them cry badly, if not, take them out to play. Anyway, don't remind them that their parents are not at home. The person with the tooth is not him. Seeing that he wanted to leave, Xiao Xia nodded her head wishing for it. Fan Zijian didn't pay attention to Xiao Xia's expression, and turned to go out. When the emperor heard the news, he sat on the bed for a while, and saw that Fan Zijian was so angry that his hair was not combed, so he smiled lightly and said, okay, we are the ones who are angry with that kid, they can go if they want. Fan Zijian heaved a sigh of relief and interceded for them. Your Majesty, Heiran is a man of temperament. He must want to go back with his younger siblings to see the place where he lived before. We have lived in the Northland for quite a while. Qi Ziyuan smiled and nodded. I know, I just feel sorry for Hutu and the others, especially Little Leopard and Beizhu. They are only 2 years old and they are sticking to their parents. You ask Xiao Xia to take care of them more. If you cry hard, send it to the palace. I remember that Beizhu and Mingzhu get along very well, let Mingzhu coax her when the time comes. Fan Zijian observed Qi Ziyuan carefully, and saw that he was smiling, as if he was not angry at all, so the stone in his heart was completely let go. Qi Ziyuan waited for Fan Zijian to leave, then slowly put away the smile on his face, and muttered, no wonder I proposed to climb over the Taihang mountain, so that's the idea, this brat. At this time, Mu Yangling and his party had already left the capital for 10 miles, and the 5,000 elite soldiers were all cavalry, and their speed was not slow. Yan Mo caught up and only had time to say a few words to Qi Heiran, let alone persuasion. Before he finished asking for comfort, Qi Heiran took out a letter and handed it to him, saying, Yan Mo, you know that the princess can't go back. Yes, you take this letter back, and you will be able to pay the job. The manuscripts that Yan Mo had typed along the way were all useless. He accepted the letter speechlessly, and couldn't help asking Fei Bai when he left, what if I don't come? Fei Bai smiled lightly and said, if you don't come, this letter will naturally be sent back by the post courier, but our master is 99% sure that you will come. That's true, their master is always a little irrational when dealing with the young master, so only the prince can lead their master by the nose. Yan Mo stuffed the letter in his arms, got on the horse, glanced at the prince, concubine, and prince in front of him, and said in a low voice, congratulations. This time Fei Bai is not following Qi Heiran as a servant, but as a captain. When he arrives at the front line, he can lead the army to fight independently. As long as he makes military achievements, a third-rank general will be indispensable when he returns. Well, for the sake of being a slave, his life is worth it. Fei Bai smiled, and said in a low voice, didn't the Duke also arrange a way for you? Yan Mo smiled complacently, and bumped his fists, you have to come back alive. Fei Bai nodded, the two separated. Yan Mo went back to report the letter, and Fei Bai returned to Qi Heiran. Qi Heiran was proudly talking to Mu Yangling, don't worry, no matter how angry Zijian is, he will help us get over it. You're sure that Zijian will wipe our butts, right? Grandfather also helped him. Mu Yangling was worried, I don't know if the little leopards will cry. Qi Heiran stopped talking, he was also worried about the 4 children. However, in the royal palace of Rongjun in the capital, Hutu and the little lion pushed away from their parents' room and ran back and forth. After confirming that their parents had really left, they couldn't help jumping up and cheering, "Father and mother really left." After hearing this, Little Leopard and Beza clapped their little hands and happily ran around the room, "Go play, go play." Little Leopard and Beza could only speak two simple words. They went up to grab a brother's hand, pulled it away vigorously, and shouted, "Go play, go play." Lishun and Lidong looked at the four children speechlessly. Before the princess left, she was worried that the little masters would cry. At this moment, the two just wanted to tell the princess, "Princess, you are thinking too much, the little masters really want you to leave." You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1081. Dajin's rebellion was at a critical moment, so even though he received news that Daki was about to attack Dajin, he had not been able to spare any troops to defend. Every year in Daki, there are people who shout to recover the lost land, and then those who really dare to start a big war are small battles. This time, half of the people in Dajin think that Daki's words are just to scare them, just like before. But there are also ordinary people who think that Dajin is now at war, and Daki may take advantage of the fire to loot. Don't forget, Daki also has a good fighter Rongjun King, and a General Yuan who wants to take back the country. As soon as these words came out, those who looked down on Dachi fell silent for a while, but they had no choice, because they couldn't spare any extra troops, so they could only think things in a better direction. If it doesn't work, give up those lands to Daki, and ask Daki to lend us troops to put down the rebellion, someone suggested to Dajin Emperor Yuli. Anyway, that piece of land can't be used for grazing. Do you only think about grazing in your mind? The wealth that this land brings us every year accounts for 2/3 of the national tax. Most of the rice and noodles we eat now come from this land. After letting it go, we can still live like this. But do you think we can keep this land now? Our troops are tightly restrained by Wokuo. Everyone looked at Wooly. "Your Majesty, you have to make up your mind quickly." Wooly almost couldn't help but smash the things he was holding onto their faces. If it wasn't for their greed and cruelty, why would Dajin become like this? His seat on the throne is not stable. Since the death of the crown prince, several elder brothers have fought for the throne, but he took advantage of it. Although he became the emperor, the power of the two elder brothers is still there. Although the second elder brother reckless and brainless, but he is a fierce general who controls nearly 1/3 of Dajin's military force. It took him several years to win him over. The third brother is different. Not only is he smart and powerful, but his father-in-law is also very powerful. If it was just their brothers fighting among themselves, they would not have tossed the big gold, but these ministers wantonly oppress the people under their rule, constantly enclosing land, turned the Mongolian tribal prince into a slave, and forced him to rebel. If it wasn't for their greed and cruelty, how could Wokuo have summoned so many people? After so many years of calming down the chaos has become more and more peaceful, and now Daki has also been recruited. If Dachi was a soft persimmon like Dajo, he wouldn't mind pinching it, but no, Dachi's emperor and Dachi's prince were very hard-nosed, and he couldn't do anything about it. If it was Dajo, at least he could use Prime Minister Qin to send him a few boxes of jewels, and he would always be willing to speak for them and stop the army that was about to go to war, but Emperor Dachi hated corrupt officials extremely, and his ears were not soft. How could it be possible to be obedient and not go out? So this battle has to be fought, and it has to be fought if not fought. But he was thinking, how to fight this battle is the most beneficial for Dakin. If it is destined to fail miserably, it is better to give up this land. They will withdraw the soldiers guarding the border, and there will be some more people to quell the chaos. But if he still has the power to fight, Wooly doesn't want to give up this rich land. Wu Lai quietly tabled, secretly thought, maybe they can try to persuade Wokuo, first drive Dachi back. Wokuo probably doesn't want to give up this land to Dachi, right? Once it is in Daki's hands, it will be difficult to snatch it back. Wu Lai looked down and decided to send an eloquent envoy to see Wokuo. Wokuo really didn't want to return Dachi's lost land to Dachi. To the south of Datong Mansion, including Zhending Mansion, Taiyuan Mansion, Jinan Mansion, and Pingyang Mansion, Hebei Road, Shandong Road to Henan Road are a large area of land, all of which are rich and prosperous. Although his tribe has always been near the Irgun River life, but also know that most of Dakin's annual tax is taken from this. Now he has occupied half of Dajin's country, and the momentum is strong. No accident, he will be able to replace Dajin in 3 to 5 years. How can he give up that piece of land at this time? As for the agreement with Daki, Wokuo sneered, it was only a verbal agreement through the envoy, who would know? What's more, Dajin and Dajo's written agreement can be torn up, let alone he just made an oral agreement. But we have to guard against Dakin taking this opportunity to counterattack. Seeing that the two were brought to the main tent, Li Zhang asked the guard behind him, is that Khan's guest? Yes, it is said that he is an envoy of Dakin. Li Zhang nodded, and asked casually, it's been a few days, why didn't Khan kill them? The 5 big and 3 thick Mongolian men smiled contemptuously, Khan probably wants to play tricks on them. Dajin has become a sick cat now, and now he begs for mercy. Are you here to ask for peace? Why don't you ask them to come to see Khan? The guard said with a smile, we have already accounted for half of Dajin's country, so they can't just recruit us. Li Zhang nodded with a smile, but the smile on his face slowly disappeared when he returned to the tent. Xueji, who is also a Han Chinese and was also the master of Qi Heiran, stepped forward and asked, how is it? Li Zhang shook his head heavily, I'm afraid that Khan has lost his mind. He doesn't want to return the lost land to Daki. Then how can we do that? Xueji said anxiously, when the prince provided us with weapons, he said well that this piece of lost land must be returned to Daki, and he did not keep his word. Why do the superiors keep their promises? Li Zhang said irritably, it is impossible to kidnap him with morality now, we have to quickly pass the news to the prince, it is already mid-February, I guess the prince will send troops soon. It has to be in March or April, we have to get the news before March, otherwise. Li Zhang worried that Wokuo would deceive the prince as an ally, and it would be a disaster if the prince fell into a trap. Li Zhang sighed, and said to Xueji, at first, I wanted to stay with Khan to be a prime minister or something, but now it seems that we can survive. Since he has made up his mind to betray the alliance, the few of us have assisted him. He, and a Han Chinese who is a middle-aged man, will definitely not survive. Xueji looked ugly, they wanted to stay here and not return to Daki. After all, they would be officials of the 3rd or 4th rank at most when they go back, but if they stay here, one person can be under one person and more than 10,000 people, and the prince also showed an attitude of letting them choose. But now Wokuo has betrayed the alliance and morality before conquering the country, and after conquering the country, they will have no way to survive. The two of them worked carefully, not to mention being loyal to Daki, but their relationship was definitely not light. Although they were itching with hatred at this time, they were still reasonable. Li Zhang quickly got out of the lost mood, and said in a low voice, we can't make Wokuo suspicious, he still doesn't know our identity, first inform the prince, and then find a way to provoke the war again, so that they will be in civil strife. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1082. Wokuo's status is not unshakable. His enemies include not only Dajin, but also Zixia, and even his brothers and subordinates. Li Zhang and Xueji looked at each other, and said secretly in their hearts, Now there are 2 think tanks like them. Qi Heiran only received Li Zhang's secret letter when he arrived in Dengzhou with 5,000 elite soldiers. His face was condensed, and he said to Mu Yangling, "The foreign race is really untrustworthy. Fortunately, we didn't pin our hopes on him, otherwise we will wait for him. If we put down Dakin, we will miss our opportunity." Mu Yangling took a look at the secret letter, frowned and said, "Li Zhang can think of to provoke the relationship between Zixia and Wokuo, and De Jin and Wokuo can naturally think of to provoke our relationship with Zixia, the border of Zixia. General Yuan's eldest son, Yuan Zhao, is in the Chengdu mansion. With him here, it is impossible for Zixia to go to the side, not to mention that his own country is not at peace." Qi Heiran said, "If they want to provoke, it is impossible to get immediate results. We will settle the battle quickly. Take a good rest today, and the army will start tomorrow." Although they only brought 5,000 elite soldiers, the supporting armies from all over the country arrived early in 3 routes, and he led as many as 100,000 troops in the middle route. The west is led by Mu Shi, starting from Jingzhou to take Qingyang, Taiyuan, and other places, while the middle is led by him, starting from Dengzhou to take Henan, Kaifeng, Pingyang, Daming and other places, going straight to Zhending, and the east is led by General Yuan, led them out of Suzhou, and marched right to Suzhou, Dongping, Yudu and other places. The 3 roads reflect each other, and the middle road is the most important. If the middle road advances, the east and west roads will have no worries. Because of this, Qi Ziyuan appointed Qi Heiran as the striker in the middle, and also gave him the 5,000 elite soldiers in Beijing. Qi Heiran recruited the generals of the 3 armies overnight, and divided the 100,000 army into 3 groups, one to take Henan Mansion, the other to Kaifeng Mansion, and the other to enter Zhengzhou, in case of rushing for help. Qi Heiran took Mu Yangling and Qi Wenjin to Zhengzhou, asked General Shang to take the left road to Henan Mansion, General Qin to take the right road to Kaifeng Mansion, and Qin Ming followed his elder brother, General Qin. Zhengzhou is after Henan Prefecture and Kaifeng Prefecture, and between the 2 prefectures. It has always been a place where military strategists compete. The left and right sides attack Henan Prefecture and Kaifeng Prefecture at the same time. They must have reinforcements. Aling, I want you to take it with you. Xiaoxiang and 3,000 people ambushed here to support the reinforcements from the Henan province, and everyone must be left behind. Yes. Qi Heiran assigned another 5,000 soldiers to General Xiao, and asked him to ambush the reinforcements from Kaifeng Mansion. Qi Heiran took the rest of the people to conquer the city of Zhengzhou. Mu Yangling didn't have a military post, so she was supposed to be able to control the soldiers under her command, but Qi Heiran worked hard, and among the 3,000 people assigned to her, the school lieutenants and general banners were all from the north, and they were all taken by Mu Yang back then. Ling has been trained, so he has no objection to Mu Yangling as a general. General Shang and General Qin felt that Qi Heiran was messing around, but before they could protest, Mu Yangling had already left with his troops on horseback. The captain and the general banner listened to Mu Yangling, and the soldiers underneath had to obey orders even if they had opinions. Besides, they had heard the propaganda from the captain and the general banner a long time ago, saying that half of their abilities were taught by the prince, and the other half of it was taught by the princess, and she was already curious, so the soldiers below did not make a fuss at this time. The concubine said they should leave the camp, so they packed up their things and set off. General Shang was in charge of the Henan mansion, so he couldn't help but feel worried. He endured it and went to find King Rong. "My lord, Henan mansion claims to have 50,000 defenders, and we only have more than 30,000 people. It is difficult to attack the city. If there are more reinforcements." Qi Heiran glanced at him, and said, "General Shang thinks that this king will make fun of the war? Letting the princess ambush the reinforcements from Henan mansion is my greatest support for you. It is an honor that no one else can ask for. Those who knew the inside story pulled General Lashin and said in a low voice, "Don't underestimate the princess. It is said that 1/3 of the northern army was trained by the princess." General Shang frowned, and the man said in a low voice, "General Shang, there is a lieutenant under my command who is from the northern army, and I swear, otherwise, why do you think the emperor would allow the prince to bring the princess to the army?" General's responsibility. General Shang suddenly realized, although he was still apprehensive, at least he did not raise any objections. The three armies acted quickly. 3 days later, Henan Mansion and Kaifeng Mansion were attacked by Daki soldiers at the same time. The two armies adopted the strategy of suspicious soldiers at the same time, and people carried many flags out. Looking down from the city wall, there were 100,000 troops. The generals guarding the city of Dajin didn't expect the war to happen so soon. Didn't Daki claim that the emperor wanted to conquer in person? The emperor has already reached the frontier? They couldn't help but think too much, and the generals defending the city hurriedly sent people to Zhengzhou to ask for help. There are 80,000 defenders in Zhengzhou, and it would be better to allocate some to support them. At this time, the generals of the two cities did not know that other cities were under attack besides themselves, otherwise they would definitely doubt the number of each other. General Zhengzhou first received a distress letter from Henan province, and sent 10,000 people to support him. He received a distress letter from Kaifeng prefecture as soon as the reinforcements set off. He guessed that Dachi was attacking in 2 ways, and hurriedly sent another 10,000 reinforcements. Said, "Order all states and counties to guard the city gates, and absolutely not allow the Daki army to move forward. They will divide their troops and attack. The number must not be large. Don't be deceived by them." At this time, Mu Yangling had led people around some counties and towns and ambushed on the road. Mu Yangling pointed to the layout of the camp and said to the bear, "We only have 3,000 people, and the reinforcements are probably no less than 5,000. It is impossible for us to eat it in one bite, but if we attack in sections, the effect will be much better. Mom, can we get the reinforcements?" Mu Yangling said with a smile, "If you do the calculations with your heart or not, as long as you move fast enough and the design is tight, even if you can't win them all, it will make them panic and lose their fighting spirit. The reinforcements without fighting spirit will not bring aid to the Henan government, but disaster. It takes 5 days to march from Zhengzhou to Henan province. On the 3rd day, the army arrives at Qinglong Mountain, where the trees are lush and lush. In addition, there are high mountains on the left and dense forests on the right. Because the road is very small, the team is very long. Worried about an ambush, I ordered the soldiers to speed up and quickly pass through the section of the road. Seeing that the team ran 2/3 of the way, the team in front was about to leave the mountain, and a huge boulder suddenly rolled down the mountain. Behind the boulder is the arrow, and many people died from the arrow, but the mountain is so high and the road is dangerous, it is impossible for them to go up to resist the enemy, so they can only leave this place as steep as a canyon, not a canyon, as soon as possible. Shujie rushed out with his own soldiers, but there were thousands of soldiers behind him. Just as he wanted to make a detour up the mountain, a huge boulder rolled down from the mountain and hit the exit directly, cutting off the way out for the soldiers. Shujie was stunned, and immediately shouted, "Let them come out of the forest. My lord, the trees on the right side are too dense, and there is fog. The soldiers can't respond head to tail. I'm afraid they will get lost. It's better to ask someone to push the boulder away."